Hello, my name is Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video where today we're going to be going through defenders in FPL and we're going to be grading them just like you would do at university.
Okay, then, so we're going to get into the £4 million defenders to kick things off. This is probably the only bench spot that I'd actually consider picking someone for. I think all the other 4.5 million forwards, midfielders a little bit less, but keepers as well for 4 million. None of them are really going to get any sort of minutes as it stands at the time of recording. So yeah, the £4 million defenders though, there are a few options. So we'll kick off first with Taylor Harwood-Bellis. I think he's the highest owned £4 million defender at the time of recording. And that's just because he played so many games for Southampton last season. He was on loan in the Championship. He's made the deal permanent this season going into the Premier League. Will he keep that many clean sheets, Ben?
I think probably not for Southampton, unfortunately. But there we are. He's going to get minutes. He's fairly safe and secure in those minutes, hopefully. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm not so keen on it because obviously he's so high owned. If it doesn't go well and Southampton don't keep clean sheets, he'll be 3.8 million in absolute no time.
Yeah, 100%. A team that did keep more clean sheets in the Championship last season was, of course, Leicester City. We face £4 million, which I actually think is a pretty decent price for him. Pretty good level of a centre-half. The only thing here is the similar sort of situation with the Southampton defence. They're all going to leak goals at some stage throughout this season. Of course, they could come in for the odd fixture here and there. So what I'd probably recommend with pretty much anyone that you pick from this list, barring maybe Barco, is just sort of see when you might need one of these defenders to come in. Say if you've got two hard fixtures in your £4.5 million defenders, and then this guy can just come in for that odd game week, hopefully get you a clean sheet. Mosquera's in there just because he could feature for Wolves' first team. Obviously, their fixtures are terrible to start the season, so I'd probably avoid him anyway for now and see who does start at centre-back for Wolves. And then finally, Barco, Ben, I'll let you take him away. On set pieces and corners for Brighton in pre-season. Obviously, Estupiñán's injured. What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, like I said, on set pieces in pre-season, and he's getting or should get a run of the games enough in those first 6 game weeks that if he plays well, he'll retain his place in his team. He's quite relatively low owned as well, only sort of 3-4% owned, but that is rising. And getting assists in pre-season is fantastic, getting attacking returns. And in this system, he could do really, really well. It's an attacking team, Brighton. Obviously, they were struggling at the start of the season to keep those clean sheets. They really tightened up at the back towards the back end of the season. And the new manager, his old club, St. Pauli, had one of the best defensive records in the Bundesliga 2 last season. So we expect them to be a lot more defensively solid. And hopefully that means Barco can really get up the field and produce some attacking returns. So moving on into the massive list of 4.5 million defenders. In terms of picking one of them, I'd definitely recommend having 1, 2, maybe even 3 4.5 million defenders in consideration for your team. If we're looking at sort of the players that we really think could do well, Ezri Konsa is definitely one of them from Aston Villa, nailed on to start. And at 4.5 million, you're looking for guys who are secure in their minutes and potential clean sheets and potential attacking returns. You're not going to expect the world from them every single game week. But Ezri Konsa came away with 1 or 2 really, really big hauls last season. He may have or may not have got a really fluky goal, and I owned him last season. But there we are. I really like him. Josh, what are your thoughts on that Villa defence? Their fixture difficulty is the best as well.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that probably attracted me to them more than their defence itself. Because last season, defensively, they weren't great, and that was obviously because they had so many injuries at the back in the defence last season. With Mings out on the first day, I remember. Then they were switching centre backs pretty much all season long. So you can take that as it is. Obviously, the fixtures that you mentioned are really, really good for Aston Villa. They've got the best fixtures in terms of defence, so they're facing the weakest attacks out of all the league in the opening 6, which is really, really handy. I know a few people were getting confused with the fixture difficulty last time with the attackers. It basically bases it on the defence, so they're facing, the worst attacks in essence. So, yeah, really, really good fixtures. I think I personally prefer other options, but I don't think he's a bad option, and also he does rotate really, really well with quite a few of the other options that we're going to go through.
Yeah, one of those options is Dan Burn. Now, I think with this pick, you could probably actually say it's not just Dan Burn. You're probably looking Dan Burn, Hall, or Livramento here. And with Trippier sort of on his way out potentially, I think that Hall or Livramento could be the play here to go. I've put him as a 2-1 because I believe that if it's Dan Burn or one of the other guys, they're still going to be 2-1 option, and they're going to be fantastic, full pack potential, attacking sort of threat as well. Yeah, it could be really, really good. Obviously, a lot of waiting and seeing in pre-season who sort of gets those minutes in the last few games before the lead up to the season. Josh, not necessarily just Dan Burn. We're looking at that whole Newcastle sort of defensive situation, right, and picking one of those 4.5s.
100%. That's why I've got him down as a 2-2, because if I was going to go with Dan Burn and he is that sort of nailed option, it doesn't really fill me with much joy. I don't think his attacking threat is really just there. I know we got 4 attacking returns last season, which weren't too bad compared to some of the other options. But for me, I'd much rather try and maybe chance it on maybe like a Lewis Hall or a Livramento. Personally, I don't see Trippier leaving before game week 1 because it's obviously only 2 weeks away now. So yeah, it'll be great if we get some sort of clarification on that, but I just don't think that might happen yet. Lewis Hall in pre-season as well is really performing. He's getting attacking returns left, right and centre at the minute. So yeah, for me, if I could know that Lewis Hall is going to get a good amount of starts at the start of the season, I would probably go with him. But like we said, you're going to have to wait and see on those at the moment because we can't really nail down any options.
Yeah, absolutely. Anderson is another one that rotates well with Konsa and the Newcastle defence as well. If you're looking for a player that's in a fairly defensively solid team last year, looking to improve, yes, they've lost a few attacking players, but defensively, they're still as good as they were. I think Anderson could be a good pick. He's got a bit more attacking threat than than sort of Mark Gay potentially.
Yeah, 100%. And also Crystal Palace, in terms of expected goals conceded, under Glasner last year, they finished 4th. They finished 5th overall for the whole entire season. So we're talking about a really elite defence, top 6 level defence in the league at the moment. So yeah, that's why it's a bit frustrating that their fullbacks are 5 million, because you could get the attacking threat a bit more with obviously like Munoz if you wanted to go and spend a little bit more, which we'll touch on in a bit. But yeah, Anderson for me, he's like 25% owned as well, so you might have to actually think about covering a bit of Palace defence to start the season, because their fixtures as well, 4th best in the league. You'll take that for a £4.5 million defender.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of sort of other options that we have here, you've got sort of players from teams that have sort of traditionally big teams that maybe don't have the best fixture runs to start the season. So you're looking at the likes of Mickey van der Ven, the Manchester United defenders in there as well. There's potential there during the season, but for now, because of the fixtures, we're sort of looking to steer clear.
Yeah, 100%. I think Spurs in general, unless you're going with Porro, I would steer clear 100%. They're one of the worst defences in the league last season, and I don't see that improving. They haven't really recruited anyone to sort of improve that side of their game, so unless it's a tactical change over pre-season, which they're still conceding goals in, I don't think I'd go anywhere near there. And obviously Van der Ven himself, I think he averages like a 0.03 XGI per 90, which is weird because I remember getting an assist or a goal off him at the end of last season, so definitely lucked out there. Other options that I quite like at the moment, I think Leif Davis is really good if you can not play him for the opening 2 and have him in one of those sort of rotations. He obviously got a ridiculous amount of attacking returns last season in the Championship. I'd be surprised if it goes from 20 down to 0. I think we'll see something in between there. And obviously, you're not going to get him for the clean sheets, let's be honest. You're going to be trying to get him for those attacking returns. So yeah, for me, he excites me because, to be honest, in the rest of this list, there aren't many attacking defenders in there, probably other than Ait Nouri, who has some of the worst fixtures in the league as well. So for me, he's a good option. Murillo as well, Nottingham Forest defence. Although they finished so low in the league last season, again, they were one of the best teams in the league for expected goals conceded. They just conceded a lot of goals through individual errors, like their goalkeeper, Matt Turner, for example. He gave away a lot of goals, and they were the worst team for conceding goals at set pieces, should I say. So I think that's another defence that we could look upon, given the fact that they're 3rd best fixtures. So a lot of options at 4.5. Okay, then so moving on to the £5 million defenders. Now, this is an interesting price category because obviously it's only 0.5 more than 4.5s, and I think you could get a decent bang for your buck at this sort of price. We'll start off with Daniel Munoz. I mentioned him when talking about Anderson. He did have good attacking threat last season, and obviously, as I mentioned, Crystal Palace's defence is one of the best in the league. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? Obviously, he's shown a lot of attacking threat. I think he only started 19 games last season after joining in January. Got 4 assists, so not too bad. Do you think that will improve?
Yeah, I think he'll improve on the numbers. It's just the extent of how much is the only reservation behind that for myself. Obviously, it'll be his first full season. We could see a breakout year from him. That is definitely not out of the question there. So we'll just have to sort of see with this, because it's the extra sort of 0.5 million more compared to maybe one of the defenders that is guaranteed minutes every week. It maybe might steer a lot of managers to go towards there. And we've seen that with the ownership levels. But if you are looking for someone who is a differential, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't maybe spend that 0.5 more and take that little risk there.
Yeah, 100%. And Luke Shaw is up next. Again, someone who you're probably going to have to take a risk on if you're going to want him for Game Week 1. The benefit of choosing United assets is obviously they have the Community Shield the week before Game Week 1. So hopefully we should know if Luke Shaw's fit enough to play that game. He's obviously only played 190 minutes since February, I do believe. So he hasn't played too much football at the moment. Was obviously instrumental for England and for Man United when he has been fit. What's your thoughts on him, Ben? If he's fit, would you consider him like a good option this year?
If fit, which is the key. Again, I think with these £5 million defenders, they all have a key drawback, which puts a lot of managers off, because I think the strategy could be here this season: a 4 million defender, a couple of 4.5s, and then maybe a couple of premium defenders as well, because there is a lot of drawbacks with every single one of these 5 million defenders. I've no doubt that at any point in this season that one of these guys could come really good. But for now, all I'm seeing is maybe sort of one or two sort of big implications of picking someone like Luke Shaw, with the injury record that he's got. Will they risk him for the start of the season? We'll have to wait and see, really, because, Southgate really didn't risk him at all during the Euros. So there has to be a reason behind that. And obviously there's a high risk and high potential of injury for Luke Shaw there.
Yeah, one other person who I'm going to mention on the list is Ian Maatsen. Obviously made a big money move from Chelsea in the summer. For me, if he does start, he could be really, really exciting, because obviously he's got really good attack and threat that we've seen at Borussia Dortmund and at previous clubs as well. And as we mentioned, Aston Villa's fixtures are really good. Would you be tempted, if you knew he was starting, Ben, at left back, to go for him over Konsa?
Yeah, if I knew he was starting, I'd probably pay that extra 0.5 for him. I know he said sort of with the sort of Munoz sort of pick, there's a debate about that, but Matsson's done it at the top level, and we've seen that in the Champions League. He's been fantastic in Champions League fantasy in last season. So I do think he is a quality addition, and if he gets the guarantee of starts, it goes from like a 2-1 almost up to a first, or potentially even pushing the Masters. It's just really dependent on the security of those minutes. Okay, so moving on into the more premium players here. Pedro Porro is the first one that I'm going to talk about. Again, with Pedro Porro, his attacking numbers are really, really decent, but defensively, Spurs don't keep too many clean sheets, and I don't anticipate that changing. As Josh said, there's not been too much change going on there. I think, again, like the Leif Davis pick, it's a risk pick that you're looking for attacking returns rather than defensive stability. I think it's sensible to go with one of those sorts of players, but any more than that, and you're probably playing with fire a little bit in terms of sort of your picks, and you're sort of almost verging on sort of those game weeks you could have where not absolutely no one returns if you go for these sorts of picks across the board. Josh, is that sort of similar thought with you? Is it sort of the risk pick that you'd maybe pick one out of your 15?
Yeah, 100%. It'll be something like a Porro or a Leif Davis, as you mentioned. It's interesting because obviously he's got really good expected goal involvement, as you can see, like better than Trent Alexander-Arnold, who you pay 1.5 million more for. So the attacking threat is there. It's just you're going to have to sort of combine it with the fixtures. And for Spurs, they obviously have a good opening too, with Leicester away and Everton at home. But after that, it does get a lot more tricky. For me, I think he's a good option if you're going to move him on quickly, but then I also don't like booking in transfers, and you could also look towards their attack because obviously they're scoring a plethora of goals in pre-season, some interesting cheap options in there as well. So yeah, for me, I personally wouldn't probably go with him off the bat, but again, there's always a place and time for Pedro Porro throughout the season.
Yeah, and we're going to put these next three in together. Manuel Akanji, Van Dijk, and Robertson in together because for me, they're just a little bit too expensive to justify. And the defences, particularly Van Dijk and Robertson, we have seen Liverpool not sort of keep those clean sheets. And for 6 million, I think there are cheaper options elsewhere that you can go for. Akanji at 5.5 is fairly expensive for someone that you're not really looking to get too many attacking returns, just 3.56 XGI last season off 2,500 minutes, which is not too many at all. Josh, is that the same thoughts on you with those three?
Yeah, 100%. With the Liverpool defence as well, it's obviously the unknown of Arne Slot and how defensive they will actually be. I think Robertson's a bit of an injury concern as well going into the start of the season, so it's not even sure that he'll play come game week 1. Akanji rotation there as well. Guardiola's already confirmed that the players who have been on international duty at the Euros or the Copa America, they weren't even featuring in the Community Shield. So we're looking at a really delayed start for a lot of these City assets, having no pre-season whatsoever, which is quite surprising, really, considering a lot of the other players have already joined up camp with their clubs. So yeah, it's interesting to see, but obviously, again, with Akanji and City in general, you've got Gvardiol there, who's one more attacking, like we saw last season, and then also he's on pre-season tour and just a better asset for that 0.5 more.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the Arsenal players in together. Saliba and Gabriel. Obviously, we talked about the little bit more risk that's associated with Gabriel. However, there's more potential sort of attacking threat there in terms of threat from set pieces, etc. A lot of the Arsenal set pieces look to target Gabriel. However, Saliba obviously provides that security of the minutes. Although looking at it on the face of it, Gabriel didn't play too many less minutes than Saliba overall. So in terms of Arsenal defence, you're going to have to look to cover it somehow because their defence is going to be sort of pushing 80-90% owned across the board. Josh, they're both sort of decent options, and if they're both guaranteed minutes, then it's almost sort of flip a coin, right?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, if you know that Gabriel's going to start, you're going to pick Gabriel for the attacking threat. But with the signing of Calafiori, obviously Timber now coming back, who did displace him at the start of last season, I think it's a bigger risk to go with Gabriel off the start, especially when you've got Saliba there, who will definitely start pretty much every single game. I think a lot of people, if you don't have Arsenal defence right now, you really should consider it. Like, they were an outstanding defence. Like, just looking at the stats there, like Saliba's conceded 28 XGA in the whole season in 3,400 minutes. Robertson's nearly done that in almost half the minutes. Like, they are an absolute stone wall defence. So for me, I think you could definitely consider one. I don't know if I'll double up yet because the fixtures in the opening 6 aren't the greatest from a defensive point of view. I know it's ranked 7th there, but that is due to Arsenal defence being so good. So yeah, for me, I think I'll personally be going to David Raya as the cheapest route in. But by all means, if you've got a keeper that you're happy on, I think Saliba for me would be the pick that I'd go for.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we can probably talk about the same with Ben White. Obviously a little bit more expensive, but provides that attacking returns. In terms of sort of the outstanding sort of picks, you are looking a lot more premium, and Gvardiol is probably going to provide that, as we touched on. He almost plays left wing in that role. And even though Pep says he rotates and there's a lot of players that are not going to play, Gvardiol has always been fairly secure in his minutes when he's been introduced into the team. It took a little while, but once he got going, he was pretty much undroppable for Manchester City. He was the reason that they probably, one of the reasons why they won the title and caught Arsenal in the process. Gvardiol is a great pick, isn't he, Josh?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, you touched on him when talking about Akanji, but really good attacking threat. Hopefully he plays that similar sort of role again. He has been playing centre-back in pre-season, but I think that's just due to the low amount of squad players that they have on the pre-season tour. There's not many first-teamers in there at the minute, so we'll have to wait and see on that. But for me, yeah, arguably one of the best options on this list if you're going to pick any of them.
And then finally, Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm not as keen on him as I am on Gvardiol, just because of that huge price tag that comes associated with that. But there is justification to potentially look at putting him in, considering the potential system that Arne Slot is going to play.
Yeah, and obviously I think I mentioned it in a previous video, but Gertrude, the final right back, he got like something stupid like 16 attacking returns last season, and he's not known prior to that for his attacking threat. So if we see anything like that from Trent this season, he'll go back to one of those bandwagon players that he was a couple of years ago. I think the reason last season that he weren't as good is obviously that lack of minutes. Only just brushing over 2,000 minutes last season, which obviously you usually expect him to get way more than that. But yeah, for me, I think he's still a really good pick. And for those who aren't going with Mo Salah, maybe a Haaland-only draft, this is a really nice way to sort of cover off a little portion of that Liverpool team with those really, really good fixtures. Okay then, so that wraps up all of the best defenders that we think should be getting into your FPL teams. Let us know if we've made any mistakes in the comments, or if we've missed anyone that you're looking at the moment as well. By all means, we'll reply to those comments and let us know your thoughts.
And as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good pre-season, everyone.
So you